All right, guys, let's talk about the 1000 Interceptor. So the 1000 Interceptor was quite a challenge. It was more a learning curve than anything. Now I've had that generation of Interceptors. We had an 84 750 that we did, but I really didn't dig that deep into that bike. That bike was just basically paint and just some mild refinishing. It was a nice machine. It needed the rear shock rebuilt. I remember when the gentleman picked it up, I remember looking at it thinking, wow, the back end is really low. One thing I should have done was redo the shock. I actually called him about that, and he said that he was putting a works performance shock on it. But anyway, this bike, I ran into a couple of issues with it. Number one, when I bought it, it was completely misrepresented from the person that I bought it from, who will go unnamed. But when I got it, he had told me, oh yeah, I fired it right up and drove it on the truck. No, he might have done that. There might have been pristine fuel in the carbs, just enough to get it up on the truck. But 1 second after that, which was the first second that I started it, the carbs were toast. And when I looked in the fuel tank, I realized why. Rust, just terrible, terrible stuff. Fought back and forth with this guy, tried to get some money back. Wasn't going to happen. It's a shame. I had to rate him negative on eBay. Anyway, so what we did next, full teardown. I thought I was just going to try and repair the existing paint, but more and more I looked at the bike, I realized I was going to have to do a complete repaint. So I got the decals, had my painter Jason go through it and repaint it. Flushed out the fuel tank before it left here, but didn't seal it. And I'm telling you that because that'll come up later. But next thing to do was just to go through and clean up, get it stripped down as much as possible. I stripped it down to frame, swing arm, and engine. Pretty much everything else I had taken apart. I left the electrical system and the wiring in there. And that was about it. I knew I was going to have to go through the brakes. So refinished the swing arm, refinished the frame, got as close to the factory silver as I could, refinished the motor. I'm very good at repainting motors with them in the frame. Now I know that kind of sounds hack, but it actually comes out really good. Nobody's ever able to tell, and really it would be such a chore to pull this motor just to repaint it and put it back in when I can refinish it and make it look exactly like it would look anyway. So did that, and then it came to getting the bike started and running, and that's where we ran into the majority of the headache with the bike, was the carburation. Now, when I purchased this bike, I didn't realize it was a California bike, but when I got it here, I noticed it was, because it had the smog and the canister on it. And the smog system on the 84 Interceptor it's not like any other bike that I've worked on. Usually you can just delete those with some simple caps and plugs. Not this one. It has two, what I later found out were air valves on the left and the right of the bike, and then the canister, and then tubes going to the carburetors. And I had posted, and mind you, I would not have deleted it, but it was missing parts, and I could not find any online manual you found for that bike had nothing about the California emissions and how it's routed and what parts there are and whatnot. So I made some posts, did some research, and a couple of people told me, in fact, Jamie from DNR Performance told me that he has had people that tried to delete the smog system and ran into performance problems with it. And my thought was, I've done it before. I've deleted it off other bikes. I couldn't really understand how it could affect it if you just capped everything off. But I might be wrong about that. And I say might because it may have been another issue with these carburetors, but it may have been the deleting of the smog canister system, or the smog system. So if you have an 84 1000 and the smog system is intact, leave it. If you have a California bike, just leave it on there, because I cannot tell you for sure if you can delete those without problems, because this bike had problems. Now there's two taps on the carburetors that go to that smog system. So since it was missing parts, I just deleted it and we went from there. So I got everything out of there. There's a canister that goes into the chin spoiler on the bottom, and then the two air valves, and then some hoses. And then I plugged up the two ports on the carburetors. And then there was a port also on the engine coming out of cylinder number 4 that I plugged also. Could not get the bike to run right. Tried everything, thorough cleaning, multiple disassemblies and reassemblies of the parts, multiple stabs at the jetting, and just could not get the bike to run right. I mean, and it was extensive how much time I put in trying to get it to run right. Balancing them, it would not idle correctly. It would kind of do that thing where it would be idling and then it would lean out, and then you would increase the idle a little bit or play with the mixture screws, and then it would seem to richen up, but then it would load up and then it would want to die. And I tried for hours and hours and hours. So what I did, luckily, hard to find carburetors for those bikes these days. I found a set of used carburetors, came from the UK. So UK spec carbs, which are obviously not California smog carbs. They didn't have the spigots on them and whatnot. And something I ran into that was really interesting was that the way that California handles emissions on this bike was the connections were from the carbs. There were two barbs from the carbs that connected to the smog system, but also the way the ventilation was handled was different than the UK carbs. On the California spec carbs, the tubes came out of the vents of the carburetors, went to rubber hoses, and then those rubber hoses would vent back. The weirdest thing, would vent back to the fitting on the swing arm. I know that sounds crazy, but there was like a nipple on the swing arm that it would vent to. The way that the UK carbs would vent is the vents would go straight up into the plenum, carburetor plenum, and then it would burn off, venting through straight into the carbs that way. So when I got the carbs from the UK, one of those vent tubes that was supposed to go to the plenum was broken. And what I had to do was basically morph the plenum from the California carbs onto the UK carbs and then just run the California style venting, and it worked out. But we did a 150 in the front, 150 in the back as far as the jetting, and the two carbs, two 150s up front, two 145s in the back. And my thought was, well, why do they have them leaner on the back carbs? Because everything I've ever seen is that anything that is inboard or deals with more heat, the jetting should be higher. But that's not the case. The reason that there's 150s in the front, 145s in the back is because the 150s are downdraft carburetors, and the back carbs are not. So you have 150s in the front, 145s in the back. The California carbs had 125s. I believe it was 125. It was either 125s all the way around. I have to look. Or it might have been 122s in the front and like a 119.5 in the back. I can't remember what the stock California jetting was. But anyway, the bike wound up with the 150, 145, and then a 38 on the Pilot Jet. And then we balanced them, and now it just starts up and runs great. So once we got that behind us, everything else after that was downhill and mainly cosmetic. So did new carb boots when we did that, adjusted the valves, looked at the valves it was important to look at the cams because of the whole chocolate cam thing. And if you're not familiar with that, the 82 and 83 V4s, and you need to keep this in mind, had a problem where they were called chocolate cams, where the cams would prematurely wear. Now, I've seen where the problem was in the followers were not hardened, and that caused the issue. I've seen other input where people said it was just a poor cam design or bad oiling, but they fixed it in 84 on the 1000s, but I checked them anyway. They just increased the oiling, the way the oiling was done, and I think they did an improved cam follower. So when I checked the valves, absolutely checked those, made sure they were great. The bike has 19,000 miles on it. They looked brand new. But the rest of the stuff was mainly cosmetic. Got the paint back from my painter. It was perfect. I recovered the seat. If you've ever used an aftermarket seat cover, I've never used one that's good. They're always too short, long wise, and they pull the seat up. So I had to use a heat gun and try and stretch it out because they always want to pull the seat up into a banana shape. I don't understand why they just can't make them longer, and then you make up for the slack with how much you tighten them down with a staple gun. Anyway, did that. I was noticing that I was still getting sediment out of the carbs into the filter. I used an inline filter. So I had to clean out the tank again, and this time I sealed it. I used Red Coat, which is good stuff. I'm a big fan of Red Coat. I'm a big fan of Caswell's, great stuff. I'm not a huge fan of Pour 15. Pour 15 might be a great product, but I've had 2 issues where I had to remove it. Now that might not be the Pour 15's problem. It might have been poor prep on whoever that did it. I actually did one of those tanks and I didn't prep it completely perfectly and it lifted, but I haven't had any problems with the Red Coat or the Caswell's. So anyway, did that. I rebuilt the fuel petcock, and that's kind of an interesting thing on those bikes, how the petcock works. I just got a rebuild kit and rebuilt the stock one. It works great. All the rest of it was cosmetic. Had the wheels powder coated white, and I painted the brakes gold. I just thought it would look better because the stock color on the brake caliper is kind of a boring silver gray. And something else that always struck me as wrong on those bikes is the fork tubes. I rebuilt the forks completely. They have Racetech springs in it, and it's got a Racetech rebuilt rear shock, so it handles really nice. But the black fork tubes, they were all pitted and nasty, so I stripped them down. But I reshot them in the same color that I used on the frame and matched kind of the frame and the swing arm. And I just thought that's how that should look on the bikes. With the black fork tubes, they always look kind of funny. The anti-dive works great on it. It's got the powder-coated stock wheels for now, but I'm waiting on the parts from DMR to do a set of F2 wheels on it, which is going to look outstanding. And I've been waiting for the parts from Jamie for a while. And it's not Jamie's fault. It's just that there's not a lot of people out there trying to find these kits to convert them over to F2, and they have to be done on a CNC, and then they have to be anodized. I actually might buy another kit from him just to have, because I could see doing that on another bike. Once I get the F2 wheels on it, which are 17s front and back. Stock wheels on a 1000 are 17 rear, 16 front. Stock wheels on a 750 are 18 rear, 16 front. So the modern wheel with a wider wheel and wider rubber on that bike is going to be outstanding. Other than that, there really wasn't much else. Well, actually there were 2 things. I did I cleaned up the rear fender on that bike because it's kind of goofy how they are stock. They're really low. And I didn't really want to hack it up too much, but I wanted to do something. So I docked the rear fender about maybe 6 inches. And then what I did was I made a custom mount for the license plate. Really clean look. I also narrowed the turn signals because the rubber piece that goes between the turn signal and wherever it's mounting, they sag. And the turn signals, they just stick out too late on that bike, so too long on that bike. So I had to actually kind of make the narrowing kit using bolts and everything. It looks nice. I think it's just a better look. But the last thing I wanted to say was the exhaust system. So when I got the bike, it had the stock exhaust cans, and they'd been ground pretty good. They weren't savable. And, I'm a fan, if you have stock exhaust and you can save it, but that wasn't an option on this bike. So what I did was I got some generic canisters, and made some mid pipes to meet the kind of a manifold underneath the engine. It took a lot of work, but what I did was I made the cans look, they're kind of like Yoshimura Tribute. They look like Yoshimura cans. I put badges on them. I took off some of the trim that the stock can, or the aftermarket cans had on them. Polished them because usually when you buy the stainless steel aftermarket cans, they kind of have a yellow look to them. So I polished them out. They sound great. They looked great. I did away with the strap that goes around them to mount, and actually had a an exhaust. I welded in an exhaust mount on the can. They look really nice. It's a full one-off system. But other than that, the bike it's showroom condition. It's not, obviously not completely stock with the white wheels and the narrowed signals and the exhaust. So it's not, I can't really say showroom condition because it wasn't like that on the showroom. But as far as its condition overall, I mean, it's probably the nicest 1000 Interceptor out there right now. I put it up for sale on eBay. Got it up for $11,995. I know that's a high price, but a lot of work on it, and I don't think there's anything out there like this. So if somebody's really into a 1000 Interceptor, this is their bike. A lot of other little miscellaneous stuff like new OEM grips and handles and levers and everything. New chain, new sprockets. Bike handles, great. It's a blast to ride. The 1000 Interceptors had the adjustable handlebars, so I have it kind of adjusted forward a little bit. But it's a really neat bike. If you guys are interested in it, drop me a comment if you have any questions. Or if you have any questions about the 1000 Interceptor in general, I know all about them now. Drop me a comment or ask me a question. Please like and subscribe to my page. I would appreciate that. And keep the rubber side down, guys. Thanks for watching.